My girlfriend looked me dead in the eye and said, "It's over. My new man is taking me to Paris." I just smiled and answered, "Enjoy." What she didn't know was that her dream trip would turn into her worst nightmare. Welcome to Amelia's stories. Stay close because the moments you're about to hear are full of love, betrayal, and the kind of lessons that only heartbreak can teach. If you're new here, share where you're listening from and don't forget to like and subscribe for more true-to-life stories. Daniel Carter was 32, a hardworking architect who believed in building not just houses but relationships. For 7 years he thought he and Melissa Hayes had a future together. Melissa, 29, was beautiful and ambitious, but over time her charm turned sharp. She wanted more than Daniel's quiet loyalty. She wanted money, status, and the kind of luxury Daniel never cared to chase. Enter Ethan Walker, 35, a wealthy businessman who loved being in control and flaunting what he had. To Melissa he seemed like a dream come true. To Daniel he was nothing but proof of how blind love had made him. The breakup was brutal. Melissa packed her things with a smile that felt like a slap. She flaunted Ethan's wealth, bragged about Paris, and mocked Daniel's simple life. Daniel stayed quiet, his calm words, "Enjoy Paris," masking the storm inside him. Melissa thought she had won. But Daniel wasn't done. He already knew her dream would soon fall apart. Daniel first met Melissa back in college. She was the kind of girl who lit up every room, confident and full of charm. He was quieter, more focused on his studies, but something about her laughter pulled him in. What started as late-night study sessions soon turned into a serious relationship. For 7 years, Daniel believed they were building a future together. While Melissa chased her dream of becoming a nurse, Daniel carried most of the weight. He worked long hours as a junior architect, picking up extra projects just to cover her tuition and living expenses. He never complained. To him it wasn't a burden. It was love, an investment in the life they'd share. But as time went on, something shifted. Melissa's smile grew sharper, her words colder. She started comparing their life to others. Her friends posting pictures of vacations, expensive gifts, and fancy restaurants. "Why don't we ever do things like that?" she asked more often, her tone turning resentful. Daniel noticed the change. He could feel her slipping away, but he convinced himself it was just stress. He ignored the late nights she claimed were study sessions, the way her eyes lingered on flashy cars driving by, the way she sighed when he handed her small, thoughtful gifts instead of diamonds. Deep down, he sensed betrayal creeping into their relationship, but he pushed the thought aside. It wasn't until the day she announced Paris with Ethan that the truth hit him with full force. The breakup unfolded in the quiet of their shared apartment, but it was anything but peaceful. Melissa moved from room to room, yanking clothes from hangers and tossing them into a suitcase. The sharp click of her heels on the floor echoed like a countdown to the end of everything Daniel thought they had. "You know what, Daniel?" she sneered, folding her dresses with exaggerated care. "Yes, boring. You work, you come home, you live the same dull life. 7 years and you're still stuck in the same place. Ethan has ambition, he has drive. He actually knows how to live." Daniel leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. He said nothing, only watched her performance as if she were a stranger he'd never met. Moments later, the sound of a horn blared outside. Melissa's lips curved into a smug smile. She dragged her suitcase to the door, and there it was, Ethan's car. Sleek, polished, expensive. Ethan didn't even bother to come inside. He leaned against the car with his sunglasses on, scrolling through his phone, acting like Daniel didn't exist. Melissa turned to Daniel one last time, her eyes glinting with cruel triumph. "This is what real success looks like. Try not to miss me too much." Daniel's expression never changed. His lips curved into the faintest smile, one that sent an unexpected shiver through her. He uttered just 2 words, calm and final, "Enjoy Paris." Melissa faltered just for a second, but then dragged her suitcase out the door. After Melissa left, Daniel sat alone in the apartment, the silence pressing in. To anyone else he might have looked like a man defeated, but inside he felt a quiet steadiness. There was something Melissa never knew, something he had never once spoken of in all their years together. Years earlier, when he was just starting out as an architect, Daniel had made a smart move with some inheritance money. A friend introduced him to a growing business and he invested modestly, letting the shares sit untouched. That business happened to be Ethan Walker's company. What began as a small stake had grown into something far more significant. On paper, Ethan was the face of success, flashy and bold. But behind the curtain, many of his big expansions needed the signatures of key stakeholders. One of those signatures belonged to Daniel Carter, the man Ethan had just brushed aside like he was invisible. Melissa had spent years calling Daniel average, mocking his simple car and quiet life. She never realized he had built a safety net she could only dream of. He didn't show off, didn't care for lavish things, and he certainly never tried to prove himself through wealth. Now, with Melissa gone and Ethan parading her around as his prize, Daniel finally saw the irony. The same man she chose over him unknowingly depended on him, staring for the first time in a long while. Daniel allowed himself a slow, deliberate smile. His chance for revenge had arrived. Let her go. Daniel sipped his drink, calm as ever. I don't care about her anymore, he said quietly. This isn't about chasing her. It's about showing her what she gave up, and reminding Ethan he's not untouchable. Jason frowned. So what's your play? Daniel leaned closer, lowering his voice. Ethan's company is about to close a huge overseas deal. He needs every shareholder on board. Without my approval, the contracts stall. I won't scream, I won't fight. I'll let him trip over his own arrogance. Jason raised his eyebrows. So you're just going to sit back and watch? Daniel gave a small, knowing smile. Exactly. He'll destroy himself. Melissa will see who she ran to, and I won't need to lift a finger in anger. Jason rubbed his chin, torn between admiration and concern. You've always been the quiet type, but this is cold, man. Still, he agreed to help, passing Daniel information from contacts he had in finance. Together, they began weaving a net so subtle Ethan wouldn't notice until it was too late. While Melissa was packing dresses for Paris, Daniel was signing the papers that would hold Ethan's future hostage. Revenge wasn't loud, it was patient. And Daniel had all the patience in the world. The first days in Paris felt like everything Melissa had imagined. Ethan whisked her to the Eiffel Tower, where they posed for pictures under the glittering lights. They dined on 5-course meals, champagne flowing as easily as water, and slept in suites overlooking the Seine. For a brief moment she convinced herself she had chosen right. This was the life she thought she deserved. But the dream began to crack faster than she expected. On their third night, Ethan looked her up and down before dinner and scoffed. You're wearing that? In Paris? Do better, Melissa. The words stung, but she forced a smile. The next day, when she bought a scarf from a boutique, he snatched the receipt from her hand. You don't need to waste my money on junk. His temper flared in public too. At a restaurant, when the waiter brought the wrong wine, Ethan raised his voice loud enough for everyone to hear, calling the man incompetent. Melissa shrank in her chair, wishing to disappear. By the end of the week, the sparkle of the city faded. Ethan was no charming savior. He was a man who needed control, who fed off belittling others. Melissa felt trapped, a trophy on his arm rather than a partner. Back in the States, Ethan's phone buzzed nonstop with calls from his office. Deals were stalling, numbers weren't adding up. As Melissa sat in silence, staring at the Paris skyline, she realized her fairy tale was turning into a nightmare. Ethan's phone never seemed to stop buzzing. During breakfast at a Paris cafe, he barked into the receiver, his voice cutting through the air, drawing glances from nearby tables. What do you mean the contracts aren't signed? Who's holding this up? His face turned red, his hand clenching around the phone. Melissa stirred her coffee quietly, pretending not to notice. But when he slammed the phone on the table so hard the cups rattled, she jumped. This deal was supposed to be locked in. Now everything's falling apart because of incompetent idiots back home. For the next 2 days, Ethan's mood only worsened. Every call ended in shouting. Every email seemed to tighten the storm around him. One evening, when Melissa suggested they take a walk along the Seine to ease the tension, he snapped. Don't talk like you know anything about stress. You're just baggage. Maybe you're the bad luck that's ruining everything. The words hit her like a slap. Around them, people turned to stare as Ethan's voice carried across the room. Melissa's cheeks burned with shame. She lowered her head, wishing she could vanish. That night, while Ethan paced the hotel room shouting at his team over speakerphone, Melissa sat by the window, staring at the city that had once seemed magical. Quiet regret crept into her chest. She thought about Daniel, his steady voice, his patience, his loyalty. But she had traded that for this chaos. Now she was trapped in a nightmare of her own making. When Melissa finally returned to the US, the sparkle she once carried was gone. Her hair was unkempt, her eyes heavy with exhaustion, and the confidence she used to wear like armor had cracked. She stood at Daniel's door, clutching her purse as if it were the only thing holding her together. When he opened the door, she forced a trembling smile. "Daniel, I made a mistake," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Ethan wasn't who I thought he was. He was controlling, cruel, he treated me like nothing. I should have never left you." Daniel didn't respond right away. He simply stepped aside, allowing her in. She sat on the edge of his couch, wiping tears that streaked down her face. "I see it now," she continued. "You were the only one who ever truly cared. I thought I wanted more, but I just walked into a nightmare. Please, forgive me." Daniel moved slowly, almost deliberately. He poured 2 glasses of water and handed one to her. She accepted it with shaking hands, expecting comfort, expecting the warmth he used to give so easily. But instead of rushing to reassure her, Daniel sat across from her, calm and unreadable. His eyes studied her, and then came the faintest smile. Not one of affection, not one of sympathy, but something quieter, colder. Melissa shifted uncomfortably, her stomach knotting. For the first time she realized she no longer understood the man sitting in front of her. Melissa tried to steady her voice, hoping to reach the man she once dismissed. "Daniel, I know I hurt you, but I see it now. You're different from him, you're kind, dependable. I need another chance." Daniel leaned back, his calm gaze never leaving her. "Different, yes," he said evenly. "But not the man you think I am." Her brows furrowed. "What do you mean?" He set his glass down and folded his hands. "Ethan's company, the one you thought was so glamorous? I've held shares in it for years. Every big move he makes needs my approval. That Paris deal he was so desperate to close? I stopped it." Melissa's breath caught. She stared at him, stunned into silence. You did that?" Daniel nodded, his face unreadable. "While you were sipping champagne in Paris, I was pulling the strings from here. Ethan's empire started to collapse because of me. And you," he let the pause hang heavy in the room, "you chose him thinking he was your ticket to everything. Instead you got a front row seat to his downfall." Her eyes filled with tears as she shook her head. "Daniel, I didn't know. Please, I can make this right. Give me another chance." He rose from his chair, his voice steady. "You wanted Paris. You got Paris. I hope you enjoyed it." Melissa reached for him desperately, but he only opened the door. His silence was final, sharper than any word he could have spoken. Daniel stood at the window, the dim light of evening casting long shadows across the room. Outside, Melissa walked slowly down the street, her shoulders slumped, dragging the weight of her choices with every step. For years she had been the center of his world, but now, watching her disappear into the distance, she felt like nothing more than a closed chapter. He didn't feel anger and he didn't feel joy, only a quiet sense of finality. The front door clicked open and Jason stepped in, his usual grin softened with concern. He glanced at Daniel, then at the empty glass still resting on the table. "So," Jason said, leaning against the wall, "you finally got what you wanted. Does it feel good? Are you satisfied?" Daniel didn't turn from the window. His eyes stayed fixed on the street where Melissa had vanished. "I don't need to hurt her anymore," he said calmly. "She destroyed herself. That's punishment enough." Jason studied him for a moment, then gave a slow nod. He understood. Revenge didn't always come in fire or fury. Sometimes it came in silence, in letting someone live with the mess they created. Daniel took a deep breath and let it out slowly. The weight that had once consumed him was gone. All that remained was clarity. Sometimes the sweetest revenge is letting the betrayer carry their own burden. Thanks for listening to another one of Amelia's stories. What would you have done in Daniel's place? Let us know in the comments. Until next time, watch who you trust.